In this last video, I'm going to cover the bend, flexion, and extension of the thorax as it relates to the entire swing. Now, in previous videos, I covered or isolated just the torso in the backswing. I introduced the club, and I also showed you how you should be finishing. So this is going to be a little bit more detailed because we're trying to match up the turning and the extending part and show you really how much we need in certain parts of the swing. So we know now from the avatar that we have a forward bend or a flexion of the torso of about sort of 30 to 35 degrees. If you look up on the screen there, the bend number. Now, if I stayed in forward flexion going back, so I kept that 35 more or less and turned, and then I kept the same forward flex and turned through, you can see that my spine stays very much bent over, and clearly I wouldn't generate enough speed even if I did that at a fast pace, and clearly I'd hit the ball way too low. The club doesn't get elevated, and we can see that my head's staying kind of down and across. It's moving down and across, and it's also moving down and across in the finish. Not a great model for generating speed. If I added the extension part as I turned, so here I'm turning, I start to extend to around about 0. Now what happens in the downswing is the chest comes back into flexion. So I'm getting back into the teens, I get back down to around this range here, where I'm pretty much where I started. And then from this point here, I start to extend up and through into a back bend looking position here, a very classic looking position, which I explained in the last video. So if we're looking to understand the flexion and extension, it not only happens in the backswing, getting to 0, but we go back into flexion. You can see that number there going into the 40s, and then I come back up, out into flexion again. And again, that's very important because it helps to move the club up and around a certain amount as we're turning, for sure. It allows us to get a lot of leverage in the backswing, and as I explained in the last video, it allows the club to elevate up out of the ground, which is very important for hitting up on the driver. It's very important for getting the club out of the ground when we're hitting our iron shots. So I hope you enjoyed that video series. In upcoming videos, I'm going to talk a little bit about, the rotational component of the chest, and we're going to introduce the hips, and we're also going to talk about the lateral flexion or the side tilting of the body and how that's an important factor in controlling contact, in controlling certain balance points in the swing. So we can start to piece this system together of how the body moves.